right, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. My name is Selena Mead. I'm with the California Health Collaborative, and we want to welcome you all to our Community Engagement Agreement Fiscal Year 2019-2020 Bidders Conference. This is an opportunity for you to learn about community engagement agreements that are available here in San Bernardino County, and also to answer, this is your last opportunity for us to answer any questions that you may have about this opportunity. We are having a slight technical difficulty. If you'll just give us a moment. Just one moment, we are having a slight technical difficulty.
Try with that.
Nope. Can we do a manual?
Yeah.
Okay, do a manual.
You should be able to do it. Okay. So sorry.
Okay, for those that are joining us online, if you have questions, please go ahead and type your questions into the chat box, and we will be sure to review your questions during the question and answer segment. So a little bit about the California Health Collaborative. We are a nonprofit that was founded in 1982. We have headquarters in Fresno, California, and also have offices in Chico, Hanford, Merced, Oakland, Sacramento, San Bernardino, Victorville, and Visalia. Our mission statement is to change lives by improving health and wellness. In 2015, the California Health Collaborative was awarded grant funding from the California Department of Public Health Tobacco Control Program to administer the San Bernardino County Tobacco Control Program and serve as the local lead agency for tobacco prevention and control efforts in the county. So in essence, our function is for any organization that is working on tobacco control efforts in the county of San Bernardino. We are tasked with helping assist them get all of the resources available to them in order to address tobacco control efforts. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Nicole Williams-Archery to cover the next portion of the presentation.
Okay, well, the reason why we're here, we would love to tell you about how we serve and what our objectives are. During the current contract term, which is effective from July 1, 2017 to June 30th, 2021, the program comprehensive tobacco control plan includes the following focus areas. We have 4 main objectives, and one is to advance the efforts by incorporated cities in San Bernardino County to adopt a policy that requires all retailers to obtain a tobacco retail license, TRL, you'll hear that a lot, and or eliminate the sale and distribution of flavored tobacco products and electronic smoking devices, ESDs. We use a lot of acronyms, so I'm gonna just walk through that with you. Also, 2, facilitate the process for incorporated cities in San Bernardino County to adopt a policy that eliminates the use of all tobacco products, including ESDs, in public outdoor non-recreational areas. So the ones here in the blue are your legislative policy work that we're focused on. And then number 3, to provide technical assistance to healthcare and or assisted living facilities to establish tobacco-free campuses through volunteer policies. And number 4, to establish a youth advisory board that facilitates the engagement of youth in programs, tobacco control efforts. And number 5, which is not on here, we also have a plug that we also have an adult coalition that we have. And so we encourage all that are here, if you are interested, to participate in our coalition efforts. You get a chance to hear a lot about what we're doing in San Bernardino County. And so that's also an added objective that we work on as well. And the reason that we're all here today is the community engagement agreement. For each request for proposal, the California Health Collaborative intends to fund 3 to 4 qualified organizations serving residents of the San Bernardino County for up to $5,000 each. And so that's what we're going to do. And so we're going to have Dolores Gonzalez.
Thank you. Welcome everybody. Again, as she mentioned, my name is Dolores Mancha, or Gonzalez, it just changed. And we're going to go ahead and talk about the postcard campaign. So the main activity for this grant is the postcard campaign. It is important to note that everyone is required to conduct a postcard campaign with the purpose of A, increasing awareness and involvement in community members and stakeholders in tobacco retail licensing efforts. And or number 2, providing education and attaining involvement of partners and community members in addressing outdoor secondhand smoke issues. So the main activity is postcard campaign, and it is required. Okay, so some requirements for the postcard campaign. Key elements of the postcard campaign include, but are not limited to the following. Number 1, collection of 200 to 300 signed postcards from residents of designated communities, with meaning the areas that we focus on, number 1, are Hesperia, and the focus in Hesperia is TRL. And then the other cities that we are focusing on are Redlands, Montclair, Victorville, and Barstow. Those cities, the focus is outdoor, smoke-free outdoors. So be mindful when you collect these 200 to 300 signed postcards, you have to collect them in the cities that are selected, okay? So for example, currently right now we have a postcard campaign going on in Barstow. The goal is to collect 400 postcards as well as 100 per city, right? We have collected over 500 postcards, and that's amazing, right? However, we are still 45 short in District 3 because we want 100 per district. So it is important that you work within the community that is selected for your postcard campaign. Another example, if you are doing TRL in Hesperia, you want to collect those postcards in Hesperia. You don't want to go to Victorville events, Apple Valley events, because you want to make sure that you're working with your community, okay? And then let's also take note that it is important to note that the campaign postcards will be in collaboration with California Health Collaborative, the developing of the postcards. And then second note, prior to any dissemination of the postcards, you have to have approval by CHC staff, okay? And number 2, collaboration with other agencies and community members, example, law enforcement, churches, schools, youth, to plan and implement the campaign. So again, we encourage you to get involved in your community, attend these meetings, attend all these events, because the more you spread awareness, the more you're going to have a successful campaign. All right, so A, funded projects must attend 2 to 4 Coalition for Tobacco-Free San Bernardino County meetings. We are, anybody here from the High Desert? Awesome, so we are going to allow you guys, any High Desert organizations, to attend the Victorville Action Coalition meeting. I see a few familiar faces, but if you don't know what the Victorville Action Coalition meeting is, it is a group here in the High Desert, which is facilitated by California Health Collaborative, myself, Selena, Jennifer, and Nicole. If you have any questions at the end, we can answer them for you. But basically, the Victorville Coalition is a work group who focuses on efforts here in the High Desert. So it's a smaller group. The culture is different. We talk about all of the cities in the High Desert. Okay, so moving on. All right, so additional requirements. In addition to gathering the signed postcards as well as attending 2 meetings, there are some additional requirements. Each funded project must also incorporate at least 2 of the following activities. A, informational presentations to member of youth serving organizations. Does anybody have any examples what that might mean? Anybody? So it could be YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, ELAC meetings, DLAC meetings, PTA meetings, etc. Number B, educational presentations to local law enforcement and key city decision makers. It is important to note that the presentations have to be 20 to 30 minute long and one-on-one with your decision makers. And then C, community education and outreach activities. These are my favorite. I love tabling events. And then what does other relevant activities mean? Basically, these are things that support the campaign for the city. We are open to hear your ideas. So if you have ideas, go ahead and list all of those activities on your application. And if they follow the guidelines, then we will approve of them. It is important to note that if you want to do 2 number A's, 2 number B's, that is fine. You can do 2 of the same. What you cannot do is the twofer. You cannot host a presentation to youth serving members and then have a decision maker there and then count both activities for 2 events. You have to have 2 separate events at 2 different times. They could be on the same day, but 2 separate events. And then it's also important to note that you can incorporate the main activity, the postcard campaign. So if you have a community event where you're tabling, it's good to get your postcards signed there. If you're giving a presentation before and after, you can ask your members. All right, so moving on, we are going to discuss each of these sections in a moment, but I really want to read and highlight what's in the blue box. So submission should consist of 1 PDF that fulfills the expectations listed in the response requirements section below. In addition, applications must include a proposed expense plan or budget that outlines the cost of implementing proposed activities for an amount not to exceed $5,000. All right, so the first talking point, the document that you receive in your RFP needs to be the document that you submit. Okay, any additional attachments will not be reviewed. In red, it says late applications and those not meeting eligibility requirements will not be reviewed. So again, make sure you turn in your applications on time and you attach it to 1 PDF. If you are having trouble downloading your file, saving your file, we can assist you with that. However, we cannot assist you with answering the questions on the application. And we encourage you to contact CHC and ask any questions, but not the day of, please. We might not be able to get back to you. So again, today is the last day to ask certain questions. All right, so moving forward, we have the bidder profile. So I'm sure some of you guys have already filled this out, but this is the basic information, self-explanatory. Go ahead and fill this out. If you do have questions on the slide, go ahead. We'll be here to answer them at the end. All right, the physical agent profile. This is actually an important slide. This section is only for community organizations that do not have a 501c3, such as community coalitions, youth groups. However, you can partner with an organization that does have a 501c3, which can act as your physical agent. All right. So if you are awarded the money will be sent to your physical agent and they will distribute and manage your funds. At the end of the day, the physical agent is the person who is responsible for your money. So we want to remind you, if all of the tasks are not met, then your physical agent is going to be the person who gets in trouble. So we encourage you to complete all of your stuff, all of your tasks within the 8 months. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Nicole.
Okay, so the next thing we want to talk about are the qualifications. We want you to provide a brief description, not a book, but a brief description of your organization, including the experience you have working with similar projects. We don't assume that all the organizations have tobacco work, but we definitely would like to see some advocacy work. We'd like to see what would qualify you to be able to really implement this task to completion. Also, please outline the years and the types of experience you have working in the target communities of San Bernardino County, and specifically your targeted area. For example, if you are a high desert resident, a high desert community organization, it's kind of hard for you to already have capacity in, say, Montclair. So we'd like to see if you have experience and connectivity to the targeted areas that you're identifying. Also, describe the special circumstances that make your organization best suited to fulfill the community engagement agreements outlined. So definitely use that opportunity to give us a little snapshot of who you are and what qualifies you to be able to execute this. Proposed project description. So this is where you can really get a chance to really give us a little bit more detail. I like to call it the what, the who's, the where's, the how's. So definitely provide the description of your proposed project. Include your goals, your timelines, your intervention activities, and roles and responsibilities, and the persons responsible, which staff members are going to do what. Who are you going to use? Describe how the proposed project will support the overall efforts for TRL if that's your campaign, or smoke-free outdoors if that's your desire, and how members of the target communities will be involved. So this is a real opportune moment to be able to really tell, and you can be creative in this moment. So, and also I'd like to also definitely identify, because I was able to be a part of the review. Let us know your connection strategies, because that's really important too, because you may not have a lot of experience with tobacco, but those connectivity issues will really, really help you. So try that. But remember to be creative, and you will absolutely get a chance to answer questions in a moment. Proposed expense plan. So this is probably where most people will have a lot of questions. And so what I want to do is I want to just read this for you. This is for the total cost of what you're going to be able to do to execute this whole plan and process. So they made sure to put this in red, so I wanted to make sure to identify this first. If you're going to use part of the funding that you're going to get for equipment, you have a maximum amount, and that's $500 in total. And so that's if it's 1 through 5 or one item, you will only be able to spend at max $500 for equipment. Next, I want you to make sure to mention that you provide a description on how the requested funds will be used. Within the description, please list who will be responsible and the cost for implementing each and every activity. In addition, please list any materials or services that will be provided in kind. So you may have someone that's in your reach that's going to provide marketing, and they may do that as in kind. You definitely will mention that on the expense plan as well. Please be aware that funds under this agreement cannot be used to fund any political activity or lobbying. In addition, if funds will be used to purchase gift cards as incentives, what we make sure to mention is that you cannot use those funding incentives at establishments that provide alcohol and tobacco. And incentives cannot exceed $50 for the entire contract period per person.
All right, so for the selection and rationale and process, applicants will be selected based on these categories. Relevant experience. So you should have relevant experience and cost effectiveness and demonstrated ability and commitment to complete the community engagement agreement requirements. We wanted to note that we create a review committee of coalition members and or community representatives. We believe this is important because we want the community involved. We want the community to decide whether your project will serve and is what they're looking for. And then Monica is supposed to present. You can go ahead and present it. All right, so electronic submission only. It is important to note that all applications are electronic and they need to be attached to one PDF document and emailed to mgration@healthcollaborative.org with the following statement in the subject line. We want this in the subject line because, as you know, a lot of us receive a lot of emails in one day. So make sure you put that in the subject line and email your application one PDF. No additional attachments, like I mentioned earlier. Again, if you need additional space, try to make sure all your responses are concise as possible. And then questions, comments, concerns, we'll open up the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take the moment to introduce you to Eddie Hernandez. He is going to absolutely answer any questions. He's the most qualified in the room to be able to answer all the questions that may come from this community engagement agreement. So if you have any questions, definitely the question and answer period is open now.
Okay, can I just start by asking, did everybody get a chance to look at the RFPs, the request for applications? You guys were able to open it okay? Okay. So we have one question.
My question is, as far as the postcards, are you providing the postcards and the designs, or are we creating them?
So the postcards have been created. They are actually being used currently. As far as how they've been received in the community, I think we have a pretty good response from community members to want to use and sign for purposes of our policy campaigns. So you would get those. Any other questions?
How do we show the in-kind expenditures? Does the total go in the amount calculated column, or do we create more than 5,000 expenditures?
So you have a total of up to $5,000 that you can budget for. If you have for use with the mini grant funds or the community engagement grant funding, if you have the additional activities under the line item, just identify those additional activities as such. So additional activity, describe what those are. So one thing, for example, could be the facility. If you are proposing to do one of the required activities and that activity requires the use of a facility, you can mention as an additional, as an in-kind item, the fact that you already have that. And be sure to list an amount for what the value of that is. It's not going to count against you, and it's not going to count in your favor, but it will make a difference when we look at what you're bringing in as far as resources to your application.
And do you want to see the sign-in sheets for those activities? Should those be attached as proof or just?
Everything that gets paid for using the community engagement agreement funds needs to be backed up with documentation. So for any events that you list and participate in, we need to be able to track by sign-in sheets and then other attachments what it was that you did. So yes, sign-in sheets, pictures, newspaper clippings if any of your activities ended up being covered by the local newspapers or any such thing. So we need to have that kind of backup for all of your activities.
And I'm sorry, I didn't catch what you said about under the proposed expense plan. There was $500 for equipment. Then there was $50 per person. What was that for?
Okay, so if your program is going to require some equipment in order for it to achieve the intended outcomes, you have a $500 limit. And that still will need to be approved during the review process, and if he gets elected, the negotiations process. So even though you can budget up to $500,000, please know that it's not guaranteed. As far as the $50 limit that was mentioned, that was specific to stipends. Stipends may be provided to participants or volunteers in your activities, but there is a cap of $50 per person for the entirety of this agreement. Any other questions?
Yes, I do. As far as, because I see this as just the equipment, but what happens to the expenditures on, like, say, food or entertainment? I mean, where would that still go under that category?
So if you look at the proposed expense plan template that we're showing on the screen right now, but which is available in the RFP package, on the left-hand side, under equipment, there are several rows. That is where you would identify what those additional activities or expenses are, rather. So if you have a person's time that you're gonna charge slightly to the program, of course, knowing that you have a $5,000 limit, you would write in personnel or staff time in the line item description. You want to identify what that expense would be for, and then on the right hand column, the far right column, how much money is being allocated for that. So food, staff time, travel, if you're going to be budgeting for travel. So that is really open for you to be creative and identifying what the needs are that your program would have to be successful. And you need to tell us what those expenses are. Any others?
I want to get everything, so it's my last day. Okay, so say, because we have our city TV channel, and we're gonna probably put something on there, but we know we have to get your guys' approval. So, you guys have something like a cater, or?
So media gets a little tricky. I would say that if we have a proposed activity that involves using the TV station and any public service announcements or anything that you want to run related to your project, program staff are going to have to review and approve that. There is a process that even us as a program have to go through, and that's focus group testing all of our materials. So we want to make sure that everything that gets aired on TV using these funds, which come from the California Department of Public Health Tobacco Control Program, that everything gets focus group tested and is approved for use.
Okay, on our city website, we have stuff that flashes, like it tells you what, what is going on. So, but in the PowerPoint, if we put something in there for Tobacco Coalition, part of the PowerPoint, so we would get to this, we would ask you, we would put a design and see if you approve it so that it can flash in the city's website.
That's correct. Yes, you can definitely check with our team members, and based on their approval, you would be able to use something like that. And please know that we already have a budget for media, and anything that you create, if it can support that bigger campaign that we have, great. If not, as long as it gets approval from us, and depending on what your activity is, you might have to go to the state for more approval. But just know that immediately you would have to contact our team members to approve it. Any others?
So this deadline date is correct, Friday, October 4th,
That's
next
correct.
week at 5.
That's correct. So as you can see, the application process and the requirement is pretty simple. We hope You're not intimidated at all by the way that the process was assigned, the requirements of the community engagement agreement, RFP. We try to simplify it as much as possible, try to get an extension of the work that we do to involve local community groups. So we want to work with you. And we did that in our last round of funding. We had some community groups that were really interested. Some of our team members really went out of their way to assist in making sure that that happens. So that's not going to be different this time around. So we want for you to be successful. You have 1 week to put this together, but I guarantee you once you dive into it, it's not that bad.
One more question. Okay, we have a really big market night, it's very popular in Redlands. And we want to work for the city so we get a free booth. Are we able to pass out the postcards there?
That's an awesome opportunity.
I just want to ask because, and then, like we'll have posters on the side of the booth and stuff, so we would create it and then you would okay it? Okay.
So definitely, the idea with the postcards, knowing that it's a tool to help your policy work, the idea is to get feedback from the general community. So an event like that is perfect because you're not getting a specific group of the community that's attending. You have general representation from everybody.
But I would have to ask them if they live in the city of Redlands, right?
Well, for purposes of your campaign, that would be important because if you want to work with your city, and I'm sorry, if you want to work with your city and get your elected officials to buy into what you're telling them is an issue, then they want to hear from your city residents. So you definitely want to make sure that those that sign the postcards are from Redlands. Yes.
Now everything has to go through council. So not only does it go through you, it has to go through council to be approved first.
Yes. Did you have something to add? I'm sorry, somebody was going to say something. Okay. Yes.
Do you have copies of the postcards with you today?
Not, but are we able to put that on our website this afternoon for them to look at?
No, because depending on the city, the postcard may still be in development. But if they would like to see an example of a postcard, yes, we are able to do that.
Okay. Can I offer to email to participants a copy of that this afternoon so you have an idea of what it looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. Victorville is having a fall festival, October 5th. Are you guys participating? Are you going to have a booth there?
We will not be participating in the Victorville Fall. No, we will not. Victorville is not one of the target cities for these community engagement agreements. I know that people from other cities do attend the Fall Festival, but the work groups have not identified that event as one that they wanted to participate.
Okay, I thought I heard that Victorville was part of it.
Oh, it is for the outdoors,
Smoke-free
the smoke-free outdoors. I'm sorry, I misspoke. But the postcard for that campaign has not been developed and will not be developed in time for Fall Festival.
Okay.
It's not.
But is Victorville one of the?
Yes.
Yes, it is for
For
smoke-free
smoke-free
outdoors.
Victorville and Barstow.
Okay,
Amongst
that's something separate.
So I'm sorry, let me see if I can clarify this. We are talking about two different RFPs, two different funding opportunities. One of those is focusing on tobacco-free outdoor areas, common areas like parks, like civic centers, like fairgrounds, other places where people can be outdoors. And the other one is focusing on tobacco retail licensing. Everything that we spoke about today applies to both of those. So your postcard campaign and the different activities that you would do, all are requirement of both of these. So the tobacco retail licensing, piece of it, and I apologize, we didn't cover too much of it, but that is really working with the identified cities, if you choose to get them to adopt a policy that would that would require tobacco retailers, those stores that are already selling tobacco, to pay a fee. The fee would be decided on by that city, and that fee would be collected annually from those that sell tobacco and would be used by the city to come back and do enforcement activities. Enforcement activities like compliance checks with undercover youth, for example. Make sure that they're not selling tobacco to underage kids.
So it's good to go. That's not,
No.
that's Hesperia. No, that's Hesperia, correct? Okay.
Yeah. So just want to clarify, two different RFPs. One of them is this tobacco retail licensing. The other is tobacco-free outdoors. We do have the individual cities that are being targeted by each of those. Any other clarification on that? I'm sorry.
That's good. Victorville is the outdoor free.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
that's the only one that.
Correct.
Okay, then. All right.
And let me just explain a little bit of why that is. We have, fortunately, because in 2016, California voters approved Proposition 56, which was a $2 tax on tobacco products. That funding has been used throughout California to fund a variety of programs. It also increased the amount of funding that our program is able to spend in our work in the county. So with all these additional funds, there are many other programs working in San Bernardino County. And in order for the state to have some sort of control as to who's working where, doing what, they are asking that we select certain cities that we're targeting so that not everybody is working in the same city. What would happen is if we have more than one program working there, it could affect the chances that one program has in passing a policy. I'm not sure if that makes sense. But yeah, we really don't want to have more than one program working in one city, and that's the reason why certain cities were picked for each of those two focus areas.
My question is, as far as the ERL and the tax money that the city gets, and so that goes back into enforcing the same tobacco. Do we have to keep track of that? Like, do we have to have like, a graph or a chart, or what do we have to do to make sure that, ourselves are in compliance?
Okay, so that would come on the city to decide. You could have a body within the city that's in charge of managing that. But yes, essentially someone has to collect the fees from retailers. So in terms of the chart, as you're painting the picture, yeah, someone has to be able to have a listing of retailers and making sure that they pay those fees, and then making sure that any of the money that's collected, hopefully with the collaboration of the police department, they are going back out there and making sure that they're in compliance and not selling to underage youth.
So it would be under the police jurisdiction, say that they are selling to you. So then the police would shut them down.
It could be.
Okay.
There are some communities in different parts of the state where the police department is not in charge of enforcement. And instead you have maybe
Code
the
enforcement.
code enforcement, or I know one county where environmental health department, where the county is in charge of enforcement. So it really is up to the city, and the city has to be able to set up the right infrastructure to do that.
Do you happen to know how San Francisco is managing, since they have gone completely vape-free? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I just heard that they had put it into place, but I didn't know who was enforcing it or how it was being enforced, so.
Yeah, Bay Area cities, including San Francisco, have been so much ahead of most regions of the state, including here. And in that case, I remember correctly, they already had a tobacco retail licensing ordinance that had been in effect, and they've just been adding to it. So that's if I remember correctly. But in any event, yeah, it was a very successful campaign, and one that I'm sure is working just great. They are so much more proactive in terms of these public health campaigns. Any other? No questions online?
Well, there was no one connected. Let me double check.
Anything else that you can think of? Okay, so we agreed we're gonna send you a template of that postcard so you have an idea on what the requirement is. Give you an idea on how to start planning your campaign and how you're gonna be able to use that. And you have today to ask any questions. Are we gonna open it up through the end of the day, or is this? Okay, so you have a few more hours to go back and review your RFPs, and if you have questions, please email the team. And actually, I'll take that back. It's Monica that was
Sorry,
listed.
yeah, I'm Monica, I was sending it to, so yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be here, answer any questions that you want to have.
One thing that Edison did offer, for those that decide that they want to get online and access to our webinar, if they have some questions, we can compile those questions and answer and send it via email for those, so if you can have the same, so that you can have the same opportunity, to have the questions answered as well. So you'll be getting quite a few emails.
Yeah, so those questions that you didn't hear today, that might come up later on from other interested applicants, you're gonna get a chance to see responses to those. But only through today. Anything else? Are we good to close?
Yep.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you for answering all my questions.
Oh.
I just wanted to be thorough.
Oh, we appreciate your interest.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Have a really good team. Thank you. Everybody's a good team. Thank you.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for driving up here.